Wisconsin Eye's coverage of Campaign 2014 is being brought to you by the Wisconsin Hospital Association. For over 90 years, a valued voice supporting Wisconsin hospitals in communities like yours.
Wisconsin Eye coverage of the 2014 elections continues with an interview with Mr. Mark Clear of Madison. He's a Democrat running in the 78th Assembly District. Mark, welcome to Wisconsin Eye.
Thanks for having me, Steve.
Give us the short version of your bio and your qualifications, please.
Sure. So I'm a Madison native, born and raised here, lived here all my life, and really never wanted to live anywhere else. And by day, I'm a tech entrepreneur. Started an internet software company about 20 years ago. And I'm also the executive director of a group called Accelerate Madison that supports the digital technology industry in the Madison area. And then I've been on the Madison City Council for 7 years now. I'm in my 4th term. Spent a stint as council president pro tem and as council president during that time.
And you're also on the Dane County Board of Supervisors?
No.
Not anymore?
No,
okay.
never
just
was.
City Council.
Yeah.
Excuse me, my error.
Believe me, City Council is enough.
My error. I'm sorry. Let's talk some state issues.
Sure.
Let's talk K-12. As you know, vouchers went statewide with a 1,000 limit outside the city of Milwaukee and Racine. What in the next state budget should be the future of school choice vouchers? Mr. Clear?
Well, I'm not crazy about vouchers at all. I think that public money should be used for public education. Been a strong supporter of public education. I'm a product of it myself. And my 2 daughters have gone through the Madison Public Schools. I have one that's still in Madison Public Schools, and that public education is really important to me. We have, precious few dollars to spend on education, and the thinner we spread them, the worse we do, I think, in educating our kids.
If it were up to you then, would you just let vouchers operate in those 2 urban cities and not statewide, or would you continue the cap on the statewide limit, sir?
Well, if it were up to me, I would get rid of vouchers entirely. But
even for the city of Milwaukee and Racine?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. As you know, DOT, the Department of Transportation, faces a projected $650 million shortfall. Mm-hmm. If you're elected, could be part of fixing that problem. How would you fix it?
Well, I would certainly hope to be part of fixing that problem, because so far the trajectory has not been to fix it. So we have a really sort of easy math problem in that our spending on transportation continues to grow. The cost of rebuilding transportation grows faster than inflation. And the funding sources, which has primarily been gas tax and registration, is not growing nearly as quickly. And so we've been making that up with borrowing, which is not a sustainable way to continue to make up that gap. And so the debt service has been a larger and larger portion, and that doesn't do anybody any good. When you're simply paying interest, it doesn't go toward infrastructure, it doesn't do us any good. So the legislature commissioned a study group in the 2011 budget, mm-hmm. and they released their report at the mm-hmm. beginning of 2013, and it called for a really broad range of solutions, including raising some taxes and some fees, and looking at changing the way that the spending is allocated. There's a very large portion of the spending that goes toward state highways, much less that goes toward local roads. Okay. So far, none of those recommendations have been implemented.
They were gathering dust.
Right.
Is it time to get them off the shelf and pass them?
The canonical put the report on the shelf.
Right.
And I think it's definitely time to look at some of those things.
Those include the idea that when you and I register our vehicles, we report the mileage and pay a small surtax based on that mileage. Is that something you could vote for?
I think it is, because it really ties the cost that you pay to the amount that you use. And I think most people recognize that, the amount you pay should be somehow tied to the amount you use for any service.
It also recommended the first increase in the gas tax since, I think, 2006. Also something you could support?
I think I could support that. I think that people recognize, we do need these improvements in our infrastructure, and we've got to pay for them one way or another.
Okay, let's talk about health care. As you know, Governor Walker and the leaders of the Senate and the Assembly turned down the federal government's offer to expand MA coverage, even though the feds say we'd pay for all of it for the first 2 years. Wise or not so wise a decision?
I don't think it was a very good decision. I think it put fewer people in reach of health care, and that's not a direction we want to go in the state. And I understand their concerns about the ongoing funding and potentially creating a structural deficit in that program in the future. But you could make that argument with almost anything that the feds fund, that funding could go away at some time in the future. And so to just turn it down wholesale because of the fear of something in the future, I think was not a wise choice.
What about the governor's the recommendations? He said if you're over the poverty line, go find health care in the marketplace. If you're under, I mean, he's now campaigning saying everybody who falls under the poverty levels in Wisconsin is getting health care. Was that a good choice?
Well, if that were actually true, that may be a good choice because I think our first priority in healthcare has to be to provide it for people who can't afford it. And one of the things about the Affordable Care Act is to try to implement that exactly so that everybody has access to affordable health care. So what I'd like to see is the actual numbers, and they haven't released those yet, in terms of how many people are now covered compared to what we had before, how many people have actually signed up in the state through the Affordable Care Act, and what have been the results of that. So hopefully we'll see those numbers soon and see if that promise has actually held up.
On another issue, your reaction to Judge Krebs' ruling saying that the constitutional prohibition against same-sex marriage is unconstitutional. Your reaction?
I'm thrilled. I think this was a long time coming. I campaigned hard against the so-called marriage amendment in 2006, and I think even if it's declared unconstitutional, we still ought to take it out of our state constitution. There's also some cleanup that needs to be done in the statutes chapter that has a lot of gender-specific language that needs to be cleaned up so that we truly have marriage equality in the state.
As a member of the City Council, what impact have you seen in recent policy decisions made by Governor Walker and leaders of the Senate and Assembly on the City of Madison government?
It's been very challenging for local governments over the past 3-4 years because what the state has done is first cut our shared revenue, which is the way that we try to create tax fairness in the state by balancing income tax and property tax. So what that does is put more and more pressure on the property tax. At the same time, you have the legislature putting very strict levy limits on. So they're saying no more property taxes. So we're squeezed from both sides. We're reductions in revenue and limitations on our ability to tax. They've also put very strict limitations on our ability to create new fees so that even users of services can help offset the costs of those services. So it's been very challenging, and the frustrating part for me is that Madisonians should be the ones to make decisions for how Madison as a city is run, and more the legislature has taken those powers away from us and preempted on things like revenue and things like tenant legislation and all sorts of things that really are not of statewide concern.
Of all these policy decisions that the GOP has made, which one would you most like to overturn?
I think the thing that really we need to look at is the shared revenue formulas and the amount of basically income tax that is redistributed to municipalities, because like I said, that's a fundamental part of tax fairness in the state, is balancing income taxes, which are fair to some people and unfair to others, and property taxes, which are also more fair to some people than others. And creating that balance is a really important part of making the state fair for everyone.
There are no frac sand mines in Dane County, but still there's this debate in the Capitol. Should state government preempt local government's ability, or should there be more rules and regulations over frac sand mines? Do you have an opinion on that issue?
Well, again, I don't think that the state should be in the business of preempting local governments unless there's an issue of true statewide concern. And I think what we've seen is a lot of towns and counties that want to be able to regulate this. They know what's best for their particular area, for their geography. And I think we ought to give them the ability to make those decisions locally.
It's another rural issue, but it's still a emotional issue. Sale of raw milk. Now, you may not have any farmers in the 78th, but if you had to vote on that?
I don't have a big problem with raw milk. There are a number of things that people do in their lives that may or may not have risks. I think people can decide whether those risks are appropriate for them and make that decision.
I want to give you a chance to surface any other issues in your campaign I haven't asked you about.
Sure. I think the most important thing that I'm hearing from people in the 78th is looking for a ratcheting down of the level of partisanship and the level of bickering in the state capitol. I think people across the state, and especially in the west side of Madison, they want to see progress in our state. They want to see things get accomplished. They want to see improvements in our education system, in our infrastructure, in especially our economy. And what they've seen is a lot of partisan arguing, and I'm really looking to try to ramp that down a little bit. One of the things I've done over 7 years on the council is really developed an ability to work with all sorts of different people, including people I disagree with on things, and I'm hoping to bring that to the Capitol.
Finally, if you choose, I want to give you an opportunity to highlight any differences between you and your primary opponent.
Sure. Well, this is Madison, so there's only a Democratic primary.
Yes.
There is no Republican in the race. But I think the differences primarily are in the level of experience. So 7 years on the City Council, I think, has really given me that perspective. We've been through some unbelievable events in Madison over the past 7 years, some of which generated by the changes in state leadership, and some of which are truly local issues. And then the second is really leadership. I was elected 3 times by my peers into council leadership, which is a challenging position. In Madison, you've got a council of 20 truly independent thinkers, and leading that is a big challenge and a big honor that I was proud to do for 3 years.
Very good. Mark Clear is a Democrat. He's running in the 78th Assembly District. He's from Madison. The primary is August 12th. Mr. Clear, thanks for visiting Wisconsin Eye.
Thank you.